All right, guys, I got the idea for this one from Josh Bridges. Josh Bridges, former games athlete. I would consider him second generation. So I would consider first generation games athletes like Annie Thor's daughter, Josh Everett, Jason Khalipa. I think second generation now is Rich Froning, Josh Bridges, those kind of guys come into play. But I saw him do something like this and I was like, I have thoughts on that too. So this is going to be the 5 movements I don't program as much as I used to for class, and why. At the end of this, if you have thoughts, if you disagree, I would love to get your opinion on this, because this is just a subject matter I love to talk about. So I would be thrilled if you agree, disagree, or just have other thoughts on it. All right, so I'm taking this from the standpoint of pros and cons, and I'll list the pros in a way that, so one of the things that way CrossFit defines fitness, you may have heard this before if you've listened to these, is the 10 general physical skills. There you go. And they are, let's see if I can do this: speed, strength, power, stamina, cardiovascular endurance, coordination, agility, accuracy, balance, and flexibility. Got it, 10 of those. So these movements, how many of those they hit versus why they have, what negatives they have around them. And I'll go from 5, which is the one I would still program in theory the most of these, all the way down to number 1 being the one I would program the least, that I think has the most cons compared to pros. So number 5, this may be a little surprising, double unders. So even if you heard me talk about this recently, I think double unders are something every CrossFit athlete should eventually be able to do. I just think it's a good test. So going back to the skills, speed, coordination, balance, all those things get tested, as well as a great way to test your cardiovascular endurance, just like rowing, running, biking, those kind of things. Now, do I think double unders are bad? No, I do not think they are bad. But because of the ballistic nature where you're bouncing on your knees, over time, I think they need to be done in moderation. There can be too much of a good thing. I would compare this to running. We all think running is great. Can you do too much running? Yes, that is definitely true. There's no arguing that. You can definitely run too much, and either your shins, your knees, your hips, something is going to start to give out when you're just putting mileage on those legs. Doesn't mean we all shouldn't run. We should run. Just be aware of how much we're running, how much we're developing over the course of a lifetime. And that's what I would say with double unders. I try to program double unders maybe once every other week. So still fairly frequently, because I think it's a great way to test cardiovascular endurance. Again, in CrossFit, what I like is we are all athletic. So we're not just fit, we're athletes. And that transfers to all other areas of life. So I think it's a very good skill to have in your back pocket. But let's say over time, let's say in an average workout, there's 200 double unders at the gym, and there could be a lot less, could be a lot more. See if I can do the math on this. So if I program it every other week, let's say 25 weeks out of the year, I program double unders and there's 200. That's gonna mean you're gonna end up doing 5,000 double unders in a year, give or take. Let's say I program them every week. That suddenly doubles, that becomes 10,000 double unders every year. Let's say the course of over 5 years, that's an extra 25,000 double unders. And I do think that wear and tear on the knee can have downstream effects as you get older. That tissue we have, as we know, our ligaments and tendons get thicker, less elastic, more brittle. All these things happen. And so we want to keep them active. So double unders are what's going to keep your knee healthy, but then you go too far to the other side and they may break that tissue down. And so that's why I program them, but I'm very aware of how often I throw them in, because I think it's a powerful tool I need to use intelligently. Like rowing, you can row till you fall off the rower. And if I was programming rowing a lot, I think that's just me being lazy as a programmer. So I don't think it has the same effect of something like running would, or double unders. And running in a CrossFit world, I think it would be very hard to program running too much, because we just don't do the long 10, 15 miles, that kind of stuff. We do 400s and 800s and 200s. So there's not much danger of that. With double unders, it could easily happen where I think I'm programming too many. All right, the second one, this may be surprising as well. Power snatches and squat snatches. Again, something I think we all need to do and should be able to do our whole life. You should always be able to at least power snatch. As Greg Glassman said, there is no other single movement that used in different ways you can hit all 10 of those general physical skills I listed off. All of those: strength, power, coordination, agility, accuracy, balance, all of them, flexibility, all of it gets worked and trained with a snatch. But every time I see someone catch a snatch overhead and they're pushing it out, and I'm cringing while they're doing that. Because you may not pay for that right then, guys. And here's the thing, this is like every time you do a bar muscle up or a ring muscle up and you chicken wing, you may leave that day and it doesn't hurt your shoulder, and the next day it doesn't hurt either. Just know that you shaved off a little part of your labrum, a little part of your rotator cuff, and 5 years down the road, when your rotator cuff tears or your labrum tears, and you're like, man, that wasn't even that bad of all I was doing was snatching or power cleaning. It's because of all those chicken wing muscle ups you did early in your life that you thought you got away with. You didn't get away with them. You will pay for it. It's just not going to be right then. And that's the same with snatches. A snatch done well and properly, there is no damage done to your shoulder. But done sloppily, where you're not catching it locked out or you're pulling with your lower back too much, that kind of wear and tear will build up. And so again, we will snatch of some kind, whether it's a dumbbell or a barbell, something like that, almost weekly. We won't snatch with a barbell every week, maybe every other week, but we're doing some kind of a snatch. But I'm very specific with how often I program them and in what amounts, because I want to do it in such a way that I think done right, you can do them all very cleanly. And I can't stop people from doing bad power snatches. I will try to. I will be like, we should stop or we should go down and wait. But ultimately, we're all adults. You're going to do what you do. But I don't want to put you in that situation too many times all the time. So that would be number 4. Number 3, sumo deadlift high pull. And this is a movement, when people criticize CrossFit or the movements we do, this is like the most common movement that comes up. Because when you're in this position up here, from a lot of outside of CrossFit people's perspective, you're putting your shoulder in a bad position. And I would say when they are done correctly, where the elbows are higher than your hands are nice and tight, tucked under your chin, you're in that proper position, they are not bad for your shoulder. But it is a very easy move to do when you're going fast or you're tired, to put yourself in a bad position where your elbows are lower than your hand, you're shrugging up with your shoulders. It's very easy to do this poorly. And when you do them poorly, you are damaging your shoulder. Again, you may not suffer from it, you may not pay for it right then, but you're gonna pay in 5 years, you're gonna pay in 10 years from now for that. And I think it's a move that when you're fatigued, takes a lot of discipline to do right, and not all of us have that discipline. And so I like to use sumo deadlift high pulls more in EMOMs, where you can work the movement, but you can really be deliberate with the form. You're not worried about going fast. You're worried about getting 5-10 reps done really well. And I like to do them too with a weight that is very manageable for you. As soon as it gets heavy or you get fatigued, I think form on this is very hard to hold. So pros on the sumo deadlift high pull: it is the gateway movement to all of the Olympic lifts. It is the ultimate core to extremity movement. It teaches you to keep your arms long until your hips and shoulders are extended, and then pull with your arms. It teaches a lot of movement patterns that transfer to the snatch and the clean and jerk, which is why I think if you take your CrossFit level 1, that's why it's still one of the 9 foundational movements. Because I don't think we've ever seen, or maybe not since over 10 years ago, a sumo deadlift high pull in the open. And I suspect it's for the same reason that I'm talking about, that they know this movement done poorly is going to be potentially damaging and outweigh the good it is doing. And so I don't think they're putting people in a position in the open where they know you're going to go as hard as you can on it. So yeah, while I'll throw it into EMOMs, you will very rarely see it in a Metcon in the gym. Maybe less than 5 times a year for sure. All right, number 2. This one should come as no surprise if you know me. Handstand push-ups. And the bottom line is this, guys, our neck makes a really shitty shock absorber. It just does. It's not built for that. Now, the pros on handstand push-ups, I think all of us as adults need to get upside down. We need to be able to control our body upside down. So talking about balance, coordination, agility, all these things come into play with a handstand push-up. It is one of those skills I think you should be able to do. And it shows, it's a great way in gymnastics, one of the best ways to demonstrate body weight pushing strength. But when you're repping them out and you're coming down hard on your head over and over and over, even if there's a mat underneath, like anybody who's done a bunch knows, they know the feeling of I've either got a headache or my neck is really stiff, I'm getting these stingers down my arms. That is all bad. And so while I think it is, again, something we should do, I'm going to do it very sparingly. And I program handstand push-ups way less than I used to. And it's something you're going to see in the open occasionally, so we need to be able to do a decent amount of volume with handstand push-ups. And again, I want everybody to be able to get upside down and not freak out. Especially the older we get, I think we need to keep getting upside down, so I want to be able to do that. But in the spirit of protecting you guys from yourselves, I'm not going to program it very often in metabolic workouts. I like to put them in EMOMs as well. I like to do them as a strength move. I definitely program strict handstand push-ups a lot more than I used to. So either you can do strict or you can't, and then you get to a point where you just can't. So you're not going to keep crashing on your head doing really bad kipping handstand push-ups. I think also it's weird how being strong enough to do a handstand push-up and having strong overhead pushing strength with a bar or dumbbells doesn't always correlate. And I think that's because a lot of the body control, that you need to be able to lock in your abs, you need to have flexible shoulders to get up there. It's interesting to see how if someone has a really strong overhead press, they may not be that great at handstand push-ups, and vice versa. There are people that are pretty good at handstand push-ups that don't have a very strong overhead press. So that's just kind of anecdotal. That would be number 2. All right. And number 1, pistols. All right, guys, this is the ultimate like parlor trick or circus trick. I think it's cool to be able to do pistols. Again, I think we should have enough strength in our legs to, with one leg, squat our body weight. I think that's something everybody should eventually be able to do. But frankly, there are just better ways to work that strength. Lunges, step-ups, Bulgarian split squats, which you've seen me programming recently, and you'll see more coming in the future. While they work strength, flexibility is a big part of it. Balance is a big part of it. These are all things you need to work with pistols. When I see people's heels coming off the ground, so you're just pressing off of your toe, I am watching you smash and squish and tear your meniscus. Like it's happening right in front of me. And again, you walk away that day, and because you're young and you haven't done that many of them or whatever, your knee doesn't hurt. But later on in life, when you're struggling to get low enough in a squat, I guarantee a lot of those pistols you did with your heel off the ground is part of the reason that's coming up. And I just don't like, yeah, it's one of those movements, frankly, there's much better ways to do what it's doing. So while I will throw them into the occasional EMOM, for those that want to go further in the open, you're not going to see them in the open, but you might see them in quarterfinals at that level. I want to know you can do them and have the balance and strength and skill to do it, but training that strength, I'm going to train that strength using all those other movements I mentioned. You need to have that single leg strength to move your body weight, and you can, and more than your body weight. And you guys know doing a box step up, doing weighted lunges, the Bulgarian split squats are all much easier to control. You can drive through your heel, you can be methodical with it, and still work those muscles just the same way. All right, guys, so I think that's my top 5. Let me know what you think. I'm going to do another top 5, at least somewhere in the future, maybe not next week, but somewhere in the future, where I talk about the movements I think I should be programming more of. So that's coming down the pike. Right on.